Alright guys, Terminator here, and today I want to talk a little bit more about the next and probably last major update to Total War Pharaoh, because yes, we know there are going to be loads of new cultures and factions and expansion of the campaign map to cover these new areas to fully complete pretty much the Bronze Age world we were first promised, and let's all agree, which should really have been here from the start. But what I'd like to focus on today is what else I'd like to ideally see in this major update. For me, what would need to happen to really consider Pharaoh worth purchasing and actually worth my limited hours of gaming. Now, if you don't know, this major expansion will touch the following areas that have been confirmed by CA. A large map expansion that covers the Aegean areas and into Mesopotamia. We're getting 4 new major cultures in these territories with Assyria, Babylon, Troy, and Mycenae, each with their own playable factions and new unit rosters, area of recruitment units, faction leaders, etc., and an additional 24 minor factions that will be playable as well, which is quite a nice cherry on top, basically harkening back to the older historical Total Wars where you could play as smaller kingdoms here and there, less presence on the world stage, but ample opportunity for you to make your mark on history in a new and interesting way. We also know that there will be some sort of dynastic heir and succession system, which may or may not come with a family tree. That we don't know, but essentially faction leaders will be mortal, can die forever and never come back, and their children and or generals can be designated as an heir to succeed the throne if that happens. There will be new battle maps, unique city battle maps like Babylon, especially in the new campaign areas. There will be changes to battles and the introduction of cavalry units, specifically with Assyrian factions like the Assur archers or horse masters you see here on the screen now. And of course, with this large expansion of the map, we know the Sea People's invasion will be reworked as well to invade these new areas, be taken over by campaign AI, and prioritization will be quite different in terms of hoarding versus settling these new areas as well. Now, a lot of this does sound pretty good. More campaign map, more factions, new historical mechanics, but there are also bits I'm not quite fond of. Having cavalry in the game seems a bit of a cop-out for what is supposed to be a historical game, and seems like CA is trying to cater to the wider Warhammer crowd's issue of lack of unit diversity, which is a bit of a shame. And by adding in Homeric factions like Priam's Troy or Agamemnon's Mycenae again, just seems like a convenient way of slotting in what CA has already done with Total War Saga Troy into a completely unrelated era just for the sake of having this region in the game. Instead of maybe having some more creative freedom with it, trying to imagine what this post-Minoan and Proto-Greek landscape might look like. In fact, because the theory is these areas were sacked by the Sea Peoples first, they could start already facing the ultimate struggle. But anyway, essentially it just feels a little bit off to have a mythic, Homeric, story-based set of factions here in what is supposed to be a major historical Total War. All of that being said though, so far at least there are plenty of things CA hasn't talked about in this update that I would like to see. There hasn't been any discussion about core gameplay mechanics that I took issue with when the game first released. Map expansion is great, but what about the hamstrung diplomacy system that is only useful if you're actually running out of a certain resource, and which, by the way, the AI literally never engages in a meaningful way? What about resources? Why is trading such a forgotten feature in this game? It just seems so basic compared to what we've had before in the series. There's no tin, copper, there's no production chain for these resources to then create bronze. None of this is really all that historical per se. We've got these new sea travel lanes, which is great, but why no trade lanes, no trade nodes? We don't need to have naval battles in this game aside from the fact that it would be ahistorical. It would just be difficult to see CA pulling it off, but having at least some port recruitment centers to have trading vessels, maybe act like agents to go and engage other kingdoms, or something like having trade a physical mechanic to have. Also, what about the economy or building systems? Will there be any impactful changes there? I mean, at present, basically all of the decision making when it comes to royal decrees, building, and regional economy is geared towards clicking a button to get a big buff to this stat or that. There is no strategy to this There's no opportunity cost or risk to any of the choices you have in these mechanics. And these are all at the core of the game, things you're going to be engaging with almost every turn. What it is now is repetitive and extremely boring gameplay design that has ample room for improvement. There is more time, of course, more dev blogs to come to see if CA has made any changes here or not. And we do know that changes are coming to royal traditions, ancient legacies, and hopefully to the way the god system works as well. But overall, not being mentioned very much so far could mean any improvements here are negligible, as the primary focus is on new map areas, new factions, and new campaign opportunities. We also just haven't heard anything about the battles yet. One of the biggest issues I had with Pharaoh at launch was with the battles. Battle maps are extremely small, the terrain and weather effects are gimmicky, and don't make enough of a difference to sway battles one way or another. In fact, after a few battles, they become extremely annoying and repetitive. Unit collision, pathfinding, all of these things are not right, and AI behavior is, as always, not very good either, especially in siege battles. Suddenly, Pharaoh is getting cavalry units, which is just not something I'm in favor of. And yeah, it just seems like the devs went, okay, well, if we're gonna add Homeric factions in the Aegean, we might as well add cavalry and cater to the crowd who are unhappy with the lack of unit diversity as well. There is unit diversity here, guys. It is here. It's just the core gameplay design of the battles is extremely flawed. Morale doesn't exist. The impact of ranged units is stuck in a system of unit health rather than entity health, which doesn't do the battles any favors at all. There is no real unit cohesion, and this armor system they've introduced with Pharaoh is honestly pathetic. Literally, all it does is force you to prioritize army composition to the heaviest units possible. Makes no sense to go otherwise. In fact, it's the way battle mechanics have been designed that makes the unit diversity present here not really relevant. For me to really consider Pharaoh a game I'd come back to, CA is ticking one of the boxes, an expanded campaign map to fully capture the Bronze Age world, even if some of the historical cultures or kingdoms have been relegated to minor kingdoms like the Ugarit or Elam, but all in all, the expansion is great to see. What's missing here is genuine work to make this a fun Total War game. The core mechanics, diplomacy, tech trees, faction legacies and traditions, gods, the AI, the battles, the resources, all of this is really quite subpar and not worth my time or effort. It's not strategic. This is what I mainly took issue with CA, and I haven't seen anything to make me think they're actually going to be changing it up. It could be that this is the opportunity cost of focusing on the map expansion. Maybe by doing that, they've had to neglect improving the core of the game. Not enough resources to do both, right? But still, that doesn't mean I should just be happy with it all and just roll over to enjoy it. I can't, because the core aspect of the game is just not enjoyable. What I'm really saying here, guys, is CA is releasing this big expansion when it should have been here at launch. If Pharaoh had sold well, it would have been a paid DLC, which, judging by the size of the update, could have been easily in the $40 to $50 mark, and which doesn't actually touch or improve the core design of the game. I'm not saying we shouldn't celebrate a free update. By all means, anything free is good, but we should also be critical, especially in light of CA's most recent development ethos and communication strategies, i.e. around Warhammer 3 and Pharaoh. This is all a final push to maximize goodwill and release a nice big chunky update that will attract a lot of players who are on the fence, essentially. Anyone who saw Pharaoh and wasn't sold because of price, content, and replayability will now very likely consider getting the game, because after almost a year, it costs less and it finally includes the full scope of the Bronze Age world, but without improving or even touching the core design of the game. The game flopped because of many reasons, but one of them, the biggest one regardless of the setting, is the gameplay is poor and shallow. It suffers from serious depth and risk-reward issues. Nothing about this update seems to be touching this. In fact, this update seems a lot more in line with the Warhammer design of releasing culture packs and new factions to increase the game's longevity. Pharaoh getting this update for free is a win, but the lack of improvement to the fundamentals here, I think, will make it all in vain. At the end of the day, we'll see what future dev blogs get into, what improvements are to be made to battles, if any, and other campaign mechanics as well, but I won't be holding my breath. So much work needs to be done to make Pharaoh remotely close to what good historical gaming is like, but we'll see. There's still time for CA to change my mind. I really hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative. If you did, give it a like and drop any thoughts or questions in the comment section below. What do you think about everything we know on the Pharaoh expansion update so far and everything I've discussed here today? Subscribe for more Total War content, gameplay, and opinion videos just like this, and thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.